Ukraine has launched one of its biggest attacks on targets in Russia since the war began. 6 people were reportedly killed. In the Moscow region alone, more than 600 drones were reported. Most were intercepted, that's according to Russian officials. But in Koledino, near the capital, the largest warehouse belonging to online retailer Wildberries went up in flames. The e-commerce firm is often described as Russia's answer to Amazon. Claiming the company also handles military supplies, the Ukrainian military has hit more than 20 Wildberries warehouses since mid-July, some more than once. Kyiv claims that 7 of Wildberries' 10 largest logistics centers have now been disabled. Russia denies that the company is a military supplier. And we are now joined by Robert Murrett, a Deputy Director of the Institute for Security, Policy and Law and a former Vice Admiral in the U.S. Navy, joining us from Syracuse in the U.S. state of New York. Sir, what is the effect of these Ukrainian attacks on Wildberries warehouses?
Yeah, Gerhard, great question. I think the way I would characterize them is what we describe, from a strategy standpoint, as a cost-imposing strategy. And I think one of the things that the Ukrainian leadership is trying to do is to counter efforts that the Kremlin leadership has made to kind of protect the Russian people from the effects of their war against Ukraine in many different ways. But in this case, the commercial sector is one that, what the Ukrainian leadership describes as long-range sanctions. And the attacks have certainly stepped up, as you know, just in the past month or two, and as recently as a very large-scale one in the Moscow area just this weekend.
So is this just about bringing the war to the attention of ordinary people in Russia, or is Wildberries also part of the supply for Russia's forces?
I would say both, Gerhard. It has some impact on the, we describe as the Amazon from a U.S. standpoint of Russia. At the same point, there are military supplies that are provided and warehoused by Wildberry. I think that's not that big a slice of their business, but they do supply the Russian army with different kinds of components. So there's kind of a dual use, I would say, from the attacks that are taking place. Another comment I would make, Gerhard, I think this is also tied to the other primary non-military target set that the Ukrainians have, which is the oil sector inside Russia, which also has dual purposes in terms of impact on their warfighting capability, at the same time trying to counter the efforts that the Kremlin has to shield the Russian people from the cost of their war with Ukraine.
Now, is there also evidence that this is changing behavior in Moscow?
I'd like to say it is, but I don't see evidence of that yet. I think the pain threshold that the small circle of Kremlin leadership that has, Putin and his immediate circle, for things that are happening inside Russia is exceptionally high. The other example, Gerhard, that we probably need to note are just the horrific casualties that the Russian army has taken in Ukraine and the hundreds of thousands of people killed already. And I think if the Kremlin leadership is not affected heavily by that, I think this is an additional set, the attacks on the Wildberries warehouses and the POL sector, that might put additional pressure on them, certainly. And it's a good strategic point. But at the same time, I think, as I said, the pain threshold for the Kremlin leadership for this war is extraordinarily high.
It's also that the number of targets is very big, or potential targets for Ukraine in Russia. Can Russia do anything to protect these warehouses, for example, or oil facilities? Or is it just going to keep watching them go up in flames one after another?
They probably can't do as much. This is another classic example, of Gerhard, of asymmetric warfare. And to put it off to the side, there are some parallels to the Straits of Hormuz. But it's asymmetric warfare, and the Ukrainians can hold it at risk. I see in the press reporting from the attack on the warehouse in Moscow involved, a lot of them were shot down, but more than 600 drones that were launched on the Moscow area just this weekend. And I think that kind of asymmetric capability, which the Ukrainians are masters of, are going to be able to continue this campaign, which I know President Zelensky also announced a 40-day extension of the campaign just, I want to say about a week ago. So this will probably continue, and I think the Ukrainians will continue to be successful at targeting these warehouses.
The security expert and former Vice Admiral in the US Navy, Robert Murrett. Many thanks for sharing your expertise with us.